Captain Caravan clicked her mandibles as she studied the scanner display. Her 4 arms moved across different control panels while her compound eyes tracked multiple readouts at once. Something was wrong with this signal. Very wrong. "What am I looking at, Thel?" she asked her navigator. Thel was a thin creature with long sensory stalks that twitched nervously. "Unknown vessel, Captain. Dead in space for about 300 cycles. Maybe more. The power signature doesn't match anything in our database." 300 cycles. That was almost 3 human centuries, though Caravan didn't know what a human was yet. No ship should still have power after drifting that long. Most derelicts went completely dark within 50 cycles. This was either a treasure or a trap. Rolvan, her security chief, stomped onto the bridge. He was twice her size, covered in thick reptilian scales and armed with plasma weapons. "I don't like this, Captain. Unknown species means unknown dangers." "Everything is unknown until we investigate it," Caravan replied. She was a salvager, and salvagers didn't get rich by being afraid of mysteries. "Prepare a boarding team. We're going in." The salvage ship drew closer to the derelict. When it filled their view screen, several crew members made sounds of disgust. The alien vessel was ugly. Really ugly. It had no symmetry, no elegant curves like proper collective ships. Worse, it was covered in crude repairs, welded patches, mismatched panels, and jury-rigged systems that made experienced engineers cringe. Radiation burns scarred the hull in patterns that suggested this ship had flown through a star's corona without proper shielding. "Life signs?" Caravan asked. Thel's stalks quivered as he checked his instruments. "Nothing. Wait. Yes. 1 weak signature. Very weak. There's a stasis chamber somewhere inside. It's still active but barely functional." Caravan felt excitement building in her thorax. A survivor. After 300 cycles, there might actually be a living being aboard this wreck. "Rolvan, you're with me. Thel, monitor from here and keep weapons ready." The boarding team used cutting torches to open the sealed airlock. Stale air rushed out, along with a smell that made even Caravan's limited olfactory senses recoil. The interior was cramped and dark. Emergency lights flickered weakly along narrow corridors. "This place is a tomb," Thel whispered through the communicator. He was right. The walls were covered in strange markings, thousands of handwritten notes in an unknown script. Diagrams showing repair procedures covered every surface. Mathematical calculations ran along the ceiling. And there were dark stains everywhere that looked disturbingly like dried blood. They found the bodies in a storage room. 6 of them. All the same species, bipedal creatures with 2 arms, 2 legs, and soft skin. No fur, no scales, no natural armor at all. They were pathetically fragile looking. Each body had been carefully wrapped in fabric and laid in neat rows. Symbols were written on each wrapping. "Names?" Caravan said softly. "These are names. Whoever survived kept their crew from floating away. They honored their dead." The trail of handwritten notes led them deeper into the ship. The bridge was small and primitive. More diagrams covered the walls here, increasingly desperate in appearance. Systems that should never work had been connected in impossible ways, yet somehow they'd kept the ship functioning. At the center of the bridge sat a single stasis pod. Medical scanners showed a living occupant inside, though barely. The readings showed severe malnutrition, old fractures that had healed incorrectly, and radiation damage that would have killed most known species. "Should we wake it?" Thel asked through the communicator. Rolvan placed a clawed hand on his weapon. "We should leave this cursed ship right now. Nothing about this is right." But Caravan was staring at a piece of paper attached to the stasis pod. The universal translator took several attempts before it could render the alien writing into collective standard. When it finally succeeded, Caravan read the words aloud. "To whoever finds this, we came in peace. We died by accident. Please, tell Earth we tried." Something about those words touched Caravan deeply. This creature had survived alone while its crew died one by one. It had repaired an impossible ship with primitive tools. It had honored its dead and left a message of peace. And then it had gone into stasis, hoping against hope that someone might find them. "Open the pod," she ordered. Rolvan started to protest, but Caravan silenced him with a gesture. This survivor deserved a chance. The stasis pod hissed as pressure seals released. Fluid drained away. The creature inside convulsed violently, coughing up stasis fluid from its lungs. It rolled onto its side, gasping and choking. When it finally opened its eyes, they were a startling shade of blue, a color rarely seen among spacefaring species. The creature tried to speak but only managed a weak croak. The translator picked up fragments. Crew, status, Emily, James. Kira Van knelt beside the pod, making herself small and non-threatening. Your crew is dead. I'm sorry. You've been drifting for a very long time. The alien's face twisted in a way that clearly meant grief. Water leaked from its eyes, some kind of emotional response. It trembled and made choking sounds. Then, slowly it steadied itself. It wiped the water from its face with the back of its hand and took several deep breaths. When it spoke again, its voice was stronger. My name is Commander Thomas Blake. United Earth Exploration Corps. It looked directly at Kira Van with those strange blue eyes. How long have I been out here? Approximately 270 of your years, Kira Van replied gently. Thomas closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them again, they were hard as cut stone. Then I need to get home. Earth will want to know what happened to us. He looked past Kira Van toward where his crew lay wrapped and honored. We came out here to find friends. I guess we found you instead. The council chamber on Station Nexus was enormous. Representatives from 47 different species sat in circular tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling. Thomas Blake stood at the center, feeling very small and very alone. He wore his old uniform, carefully cleaned after 270 years in stasis. The fabric was worn and patched, but he wore it with pride. Around him, alien beings of every imaginable shape studied him with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. Some had multiple eyes. Others had no eyes at all. Some towered 3 meters tall while others were barely knee-height. Thomas had spent 2 weeks in medical facilities being poked and scanned. Now came the hard part, convincing them that humanity deserved a place among the stars. Dr. Silith approached the speaking platform. She was a crystalline being who looked like living glass. Her voice echoed with mathematical precision. Honored council members, I present the biological assessment of species designation, human. Origin world, Earth. A holographic display appeared above Thomas's head, showing rotating images of human anatomy. Thomas tried not to feel embarrassed as aliens examined his insides. Physical capabilities fall significantly below galactic standard, Silith continued. Bone density is 40% weaker than average. Muscle structure provides limited strength compared to most spacefaring species. Sensory capabilities are restricted to narrow visual and auditory ranges. Natural weapons, none. Natural armor, none. Environmental tolerance, extremely narrow range. Council member Vector, a massive creature covered in armored plates, made a rumbling sound that might have been laughter. How did such a weak species even reach space? They look like they would break in a strong wind. Thomas smiled, though he knew the expression wouldn't translate properly. We're tougher than we look, sir. And we're very, very stubborn. Several translators struggled with the word stubborn. Thomas tried again. We don't give up. Ever. Silith's crystalline form shifted colors slightly. Indeed. Psychological analysis reveals unusual characteristics. Humans evolved as persistence predators on a world classified as extreme hazard for colonization. Their hunting strategy involved chasing prey until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. This has resulted in exceptional endurance and problem-solving capabilities under extreme stress. She projected new images showing Earth, towering mountains, vast oceans, frozen wastelands, and burning deserts. The human homeworld experiences regular catastrophic climate shifts, tectonic instability, and violent weather patterns. Yet humans not only survived but thrived. They also display what we call pack-bonding behavior, forming emotional attachments not only with their own species but with other creatures and even artificial constructs. Fascinating, said Council Leader Prima, an elegant being who seemed to be made of flowing silver liquid. Commander Blake, please tell us about your people. Thomas took a deep breath. This was his chance. Earth is a beautiful, terrible place. For millions of years, it tried to kill us. Ice ages froze our ancestors. Predators hunted us. Diseases swept through our populations. Volcanoes buried entire regions in ash. But we survived every single disaster. He walked slowly around the speaking circle as he talked, making eye contact with as many council members as possible. We learned to make fire to survive the cold. We created tools to hunt animals stronger than us. We built boats from trees and crossed oceans without knowing what was on the other side. We invented medicine to fight diseases. We split atoms and harnessed their power. We built rockets and landed on our moon with computers less powerful than a child's toy. Thomas pointed upward. We looked at the stars and knew we had to reach them. We didn't have the technology you have. Our first ships barely worked. But we built them anyway and sent them out into the dark. 17 exploration vessels over 2 centuries. We never stopped trying to find others like us. We never stopped hoping we weren't alone. His voice grew heavy with emotion. My ship was number 13. Unlucky number in human culture. We had a crew of 7. Good people. Smart people. Emily was our science officer. Brilliant, always laughing. James was our pilot. Could fly anything. Robert, Helen, David, Lisa, Michael, they were my family. Thomas stopped walking. Our reactor failed 6 months into the mission. I tried to fix it. I'm an engineer, it's what I do. But the damage was too extensive. One by one, my crew died from radiation exposure. Emily was the last. She told me to keep going, to get home somehow, to make sure Earth knew we tried. He looked directly at Prima. I failed my mission. I couldn't save my crew. I couldn't get home. But I kept the ship running for 3 years by myself. I repaired systems that couldn't be repaired. I survived on quarter rations. And when I finally had no choice, I went into stasis and hoped someone would find us. The council chamber was completely silent. Now you've found me, Thomas continued. And I need to get word back to Earth. I need to tell them their children didn't die for nothing. That we found what we were looking for. That humanity isn't alone in the universe. Before Prima could respond, alarms shrieked through the chamber. Red emergency lights flashed. Thel's voice came over the communication system, high-pitched with excitement. Council leader. Perimeter defense reports multiple vessels dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Unknown configuration. Their weight running analysis, they're human ships. The main viewscreen activated, showing 12 vessels of various sizes and designs. Colony ships with rotating habitat sections. Generation vessels that looked like flying cities. Explorer craft similar to Thomas's ship but more advanced. All bore the same symbol Thomas wore on his chest. A blue circle with white continents representing Earth. Thomas stared at the screen. Tears ran down his face freely now. He started laughing and crying at the same time. They never stopped. 270 years and they never stopped looking for us. Prima's liquid form rippled with what might have been surprise. Your species spent centuries searching for one lost ship? The resources required for such an effort are staggering. The probability of success was infinitesimal. Thomas wiped his eyes and stood straighter. We don't leave our people behind. Ever. It doesn't matter how long it takes or how much it costs. We don't abandon family. Vector leaned forward in his seat. You consider your entire species to be family? Yes, Thomas said simply. Every single one of us. Kiravan watched from the observer's gallery. She turned to Rolvan and whispered, what kind of species does that? What kind of species searches for centuries for 7 people? Rolvan's scales rippled in a pattern that indicated deep thought. One that survives, he said quietly. No matter what. The first meeting between Thomas Blake and Captain Rebecca Stone happened in front of hundreds of witnesses. The moment Rebecca saw Thomas walk into the docking bay, she broke protocol completely. She ran across the deck and threw her arms around him, lifting him off his feet despite being half his size. You're alive, she kept saying. Thomas, you're alive. We found you. Thomas hugged her back just as tightly. Neither of them cared about the assembled collective dignitaries watching with confused fascination. Some species didn't understand physical contact as comfort. Humans did. Emily? Rebecca asked quietly, already knowing the answer from his expression. Thomas shook his head. All gone. Just me. Rebecca pulled back and gripped his shoulders. Then we carry them forward. That's what they'd want. She turned to face the collective representatives. I'm Captain Rebecca Stone of the colony vessel New Hope. On behalf of humanity, we thank you for finding our lost explorer. The negotiations went smoothly over the following days. The human fleet consisted of 12 ships carrying about 15,000 people. Colonists, scientists, families looking for new worlds. They'd been searching for Thomas's expedition for decades, following the trail of beacon signals his ship had automatically deployed. We've been spreading slowly through this region of space for 2 centuries, Rebecca explained to the council. Subliminal travel, generation ships, colony outposts. We never stopped looking for your expedition, Thomas. Earth never forgot. The collective granted humanity preliminary contact status. Humans were enthusiastic about everything. They wanted to see alien worlds, learn new sciences, and share their art and music. They offered friendship openly and seemed genuinely thrilled to meet other species. Council member Vector spoke privately to Prima after the 3rd day of meetings. They're harmless. Enthusiastic children who stumbled into space travel somehow. Weak, naive, and far too trusting. Prima wasn't entirely sure but said nothing. The collective helped humans establish a mining colony on Proxima Station, an asteroid rich in rare minerals. 2,000 humans settled there, eager to prove their worth to their new friends. They brought families including children. They built schools and gardens. They were building a home. Then the Cthren came. The Cthren were nightmare creatures, 3 meters tall, covered in chitinous armor with claws that could tear through steel. They were apex predators who raided weaker species for profit and sport. The collective tolerated them because fighting Cthren was expensive and dangerous. When 3 Cthren raider clans saw the human colony, they saw easy prey. Soft little mammals with primitive weapons, no shields, no plasma cannons. Would be quick work. They attacked at dawn cycle, their ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel without warning. Cutting beams sliced through the colony's outer walls. Cthren warriors poured into the corridors, roaring their hunting cries. They expected screaming and panic. They expected quick surrender. What they got was violence. The first Cthren squad encountered a mining crew led by a woman named Lisa Grant. When the raiders burst into the mining tunnel, Lisa threw her helmet at the lead warrior's face, grabbed a plasma cutter and opened its throat. The other miners followed her example, using their industrial tools as weapons. Fall back to Section 7. Lisa shouted, blood on her face from a claw wound. Collapsed Tunnel 3 behind us. In the agricultural section, a botanist named David Cole saw Cthren approaching the greenhouse where 40 children were hiding. He sealed the entrance from inside, trapped 12 raiders with him and vented the atmosphere. He died choking in vacuum, but the children lived. Engineer Michael Ross ran toward the stations or launcher, a magnetic accelerator designed to send mineral containers to processing ships. His hands shook as he rerouted power from life support. "It's not made for combat," he shouted into his communicator. "The targeting system is completely wrong for this." Colony Administrator Lisa Grant's voice came back steady despite the chaos around her. "Then aim it manually, Michael. We don't need precision. We need something big and violent." Michael locked onto the largest Cthren ship. His calculations were rushed and probably wrong. He didn't care. He fired. A 50-ton chunk of tungsten ore accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. The impact tore the Cthren vessel completely in half. Atmosphere exploded outward in a glittering cloud. Secondary explosions rippled through the dying ship. The other Cthren ships stopped advancing. They'd never encountered prey that fought back like this. In corridor after corridor, humans were dying. But they weren't running. A man named Robert Hall had 3 broken ribs and a dislocated shoulder. He saw a Cthren warrior moving toward a shelter full of civilians. Robert threw himself at the creature, which was 3 times his size. He couldn't win the fight. He knew that. But he could slow it down. He wrapped his arms around the warrior's leg and held on as claws ripped into his back. "Not today," he growled through bloody teeth. "Not today." Other humans heard him. They took up the phrase. "Not today." They fought with tools, with furniture, with their bare hands when nothing else was available. They set traps, collapsed tunnels on top of raiders, and turned every corridor into a battlefield. The Cthren had raided hundreds of colonies. They'd never lost ships to prey before. They'd never retreated from mammals. They retreated now. When the collective patrol finally arrived, they expected to find ruins and bodies. Instead they found humans grimly treating their wounded and already beginning repairs. 47 dead. Over 100 wounded. But the colony stood. Caravan accessed the security footage. She watched the entire battle 3 times. One moment kept catching her attention. Robert Hall, bleeding and broken, refusing to let go of a Cthren warrior twice his size. The translator caught his words clearly. "Not today." She replayed it 17 times trying to understand. Rolvan found her in the security office. "The council is disturbed. Humans fought like cornered predators. They lost 47 people but killed twice that many Cthren. Some council members are afraid of them now." Caravan didn't look away from the screen. "They didn't fight like predators. Predators calculate risk and retreat when the cost is too high. Humans fought like..." She struggled for words. "Like a species that's been pushed to extinction before and refused to die." She finally turned to face Rolvan. "It was human. That's what we witnessed. It was human." The phrase spread through the collective like fire through dry grass. Within days everyone was saying it. When something impossible happened, when someone refused to quit against hopeless odds, when victory came from sheer stubborn will, it was human. The K'thren had learned a lesson written in their own blood: never underestimate the prey. The collective was about to learn the same lesson. But first, an old enemy would return from the dark. The council chamber was divided. Half the species representatives wanted humanity expelled from collective space. The other half argued for full membership. The K'thren demanded justice for their losses at Proxima Station. Thomas Blake stood at the center of it all, calm and steady. He'd spent 3 years alone on a dying ship. A room full of angry aliens didn't frighten him. The humans used barbaric tactics, the K'thren ambassador hissed through his translator. They turned civilian equipment into weapons. They fought without honor. They must be punished. Thomas waited until the chamber fell silent. Then he spoke in a quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the room. We didn't ask to be attacked. We didn't want violence. But we will not apologize for surviving. Every species in this chamber has the right to exist. That includes us. He looked directly at the K'thren ambassador. You came to our home and tried to kill our children. We stopped you. If that makes us barbaric, then we'll be barbaric. But we'll be alive. Prima called for a vote. By a narrow margin, humanity received provisional collective membership. The K'thren left the chamber making threats that everyone heard but no one acknowledged. Over the following months, humans spread throughout collective space. They opened trade routes, established embassies, and started learning from species thousands of years more advanced. Most collective citizens expected humans to stay quiet and learn their place. Humans had never been good at staying quiet. Engineer Alice Cooper was assigned to a collective repair station where a cargo vessel sat motionless. The ship had suffered a cascade failure in its power distribution system. Collective engineers had declared it permanently broken. The damage was too extensive to repair. Alice spent 3 days studying the ship. On the 4th day, she started ripping out entire sections of wiring. "What are you doing?" the station supervisor asked in horror. "The manual says." "I don't care what the manual says," Alice interrupted. She was elbow-deep in alien technology, her face smudged with grease. "The manual is wrong. The system is designed stupidly. I'm fixing it." She rewired everything according to principles that made no sense to collective engineers. The power flow patterns were inefficient. The safety margins were dangerously thin. It violated every standard practice. It also worked perfectly. The cargo vessel's captain offered to hire Alice on the spot. Within weeks, other ships were requesting the human engineer who ignores the rules. Alice became famous for fixing impossible problems by simply refusing to accept that they were impossible. Trader Henry Grant had similar success in commerce. He negotiated deals that shouldn't work on paper. He'd trade resources the collective considered worthless for things humans needed, somehow convincing both sides they'd gotten the better bargain. "How do you do it?" asked a bewildered collective merchant after Henry had traded Earth's music recordings for advanced medical scanners. Henry grinned. "I find out what people want, not what they think they should want. Everybody's got something they need. You just have to ask the right questions." Human artists were equally disruptive. A painter named Julia Morris created works that made even the emotionless crystalline species stop and stare. A musician named Peter Cole wrote songs that had alien species experiencing emotions they didn't know they could feel. But not everyone was happy. Conservative factions within the collective grew louder. "Humans ignore our rules," they complained. "They don't respect tradition. They're changing everything." The K'thren didn't just complain. They acted. Human trade ships started disappearing. Colonies reported raids on their outer settlements. Every attack was carefully executed to avoid collective patrols. Every raid left just enough survivors to spread fear. Thomas brought evidence to the council, but politics moved slowly. Some species still didn't trust humans. Others didn't want to start a war with the K'thren over some newcomers. Then everything changed. The first reports came from the outer rim. Entire colonies had gone dark. Not destroyed, simply gone. Populations of millions had vanished overnight. Collective scout ships found empty cities with food still on tables and vehicles sitting in streets. When a scout ship tried to investigate the 4th missing colony, something attacked it. The ship barely escaped, its hull torn open by weapons that passed straight through its shields like they weren't there. The captain's last transmission was simple: "It's them. The Shalar are back." The name sent waves of terror through species old enough to remember. The Shalar were a hive mind species that had nearly destroyed the collective 5,000 years ago. They'd been thought extinct, driven into deep space and forgotten. They hadn't been forgotten. They'd been waiting. The Shalar attacked in waves, their ships pouring out of unknown jump points. They targeted the collective's core worlds with weapons that bypassed every defense. Populations that had lived in peace for 10,000 years died screaming. The collective military responded, but they were peacekeepers, not warriors. They knew how to patrol borders and stop pirates. They didn't know how to fight a war. Within 3 weeks, 12 major worlds had fallen. Refugees flooded into the remaining systems. The council met in emergency session, their voices rising in panic. "We should evacuate the core systems," one representative suggested. "We should surrender and negotiate," said another. "We should pray," whispered a third. Admiral William Stone of Earth's combined fleet stood and waited for silence. He was Thomas's cousin, gray-haired and battle-scarred from Earth's own wars. When he finally spoke, his voice was hard as iron. "You've lived in peace for 10,000 years. That's beautiful. That's worth protecting. But you've forgotten something important." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of species that had never known real war. "You've forgotten how to fight. What can your primitive species possibly offer?" Vector demanded. "You have no planet-killing weapons, no shield technology, no." "No," William interrupted. "We don't have better weapons. But we have something you've forgotten. We remember how to be stubborn. We remember how to fight when there's no hope of winning. We remember how to look at impossible odds and say, 'Not today.'" He stepped forward. "Let us teach you. Let us help you remember what you used to be before peace made you soft." The chamber fell silent. Prima spoke quietly. "What do you need?" "Time," William said. "And the willingness to do whatever it takes to survive." The collective was desperate enough to accept. The lessons were about to begin. Human military advisors spread across the collective fleet like seeds in wind. They taught tactics that hadn't been used in 10,000 years. Captain Emma Cole showed collective soldiers how to set ambushes, how to hide in plain sight, how to make the enemy afraid of empty corridors. "Stop thinking about honor," she told a group of collective officers who looked horrified by her methods. "Start thinking about winning. Dead heroes don't protect anyone." Commander Jack Miller taught psychological warfare. He showed them how to make the enemy doubt themselves, how to spread fear, how to turn the Shalar's hive-mind coordination into a weakness. Major Helen Ross taught the hardest lesson. She stood before the council and spoke words they didn't want to hear. "You will lose people. Good people. People with families and dreams. That's what war means. The question is whether you lose some now or everyone later." The collective species struggled with these concepts. They'd forgotten that survival sometimes required sacrifice. Humans hadn't forgotten. They'd never had the luxury of forgetting. The tide began turning slowly. Collective ships stopped fleeing from Shalar attacks. They started fighting back using tactics that confused the enemy. A crystalline captain named Veldets lured a Shalar squadron into an asteroid field, then collapsed the field on them using mining charges. It was a human tactic. It worked. But the Shalar kept coming. For every victory there were 2 defeats. Worlds continued to fall. The collective was losing the war in slow motion. Then the Shalar Hive fleet arrived at Nexus Point, the collective's capital system. 300 warships against a defender force of 30. The numbers were hopeless. Admiral William Stone looked at the tactical display and smiled grimly. Everyone on the bridge thought he was insane. "All ships, this is Admiral Stone. I know the odds look bad. They are bad. The Shalar outnumber us 10 to 1. By every reasonable calculation we should run." He paused. "Here's the thing about humans, we're not reasonable. And we're about to teach the Shalar what that means." He outlined his plan. Several collective captains refused to participate. It was suicide. It was insane. It violated every principle of sensible warfare. "Good," William said. "The Shalar are sensible. That's why this will work." The human fleet moved first, 20 ships accelerating directly toward the enemy. The Shalar saw easy targets and pursued. The humans led them on a chase toward the system's star, flying dangerously close to the corona. Radiation tore at their shields. Hull plating began to glow red from the heat. "They're taking the bait," reported Williams' tactical officer. "Shalar fleet committing reserves." "Good. All ships maintain course. Make them think we're desperate." The Shalar fleet poured into the corona after them, confident in their superior shielding. That's when the rest of the collective fleet struck from 6 different vectors. Tactics learned from humans. The Shalar suddenly found themselves surrounded in a radiation storm that disrupted their coordination. Then William gave an order that made his bridge crew stare at him in shock. "All human ships, emergency jump. Coordinates locked. We're going inside their formation." "Sir, that's impossible," his navigator protested. You can't jump that close to a gravity well. You can't appear inside an enemy fleet. The math doesn't work. I know, William said calmly. Do it anyway. 20 human ships vanished and reappeared in the heart of the Shalar formation. It should have been impossible. The gravitational forces should have torn them apart. Several ships did tear apart, their crews dying instantly. The rest opened fire at point-blank range. Chaos erupted. The Shalar's long-range weapons were useless at zero distance. Human ships rammed enemy vessels, fired weapons through their bridges, and detonated their own reactor cores inside Shalar docking bays. Captain Rebecca Stone's ship lost all weapons. She didn't retreat. She accelerated directly toward a Shalar command vessel and activated her self-destruct sequence. Her last transmission was simple: for Thomas and Emily and everyone we've lost. Not today. Admiral William Stone watched his tactical display as ship after ship winked out. So many deaths. So many brave people. His flagship shuddered as Shalar weapons tore into it. Sir, we're breached on all decks. Life support failing. We should abandon ship. William looked at the largest Shalar vessel on his screen. The Hive Queen's ship, where all the coordination originated. If that ship died, the entire fleet would be confused. Set collision course, he ordered. All power to engines. Evacuate everyone who can reach the pods. Sir, you'll die. I know. William thought of Thomas, who'd survived alone for 3 years. He thought of all the humans who'd refused to quit when quitting made sense. That's what humans do. We buy time for others to live. The flagship Defiant accelerated toward the Hive Queen's vessel. Shalar weapons hammered it, but William had diverted everything to forward shields and engines. The ship was a burning wreck, but it was still flying. Tell Earth, William said to his fleeing crew, that we were human to the end. The collision was visible from every ship in the battle. The reactor detonation that followed destroyed both vessels and 10 more nearby. The Shalar Hive coordination shattered. Without the Queen's direction, their ships became confused, turning on each other or fleeing randomly. The collective fleet pressed the advantage. Ships that had been ready to run hours ago now fought with desperate courage. They'd learned from humans that sometimes you win by refusing to accept defeat. When the battle finally ended, Nexus Point was saved. The cost had been terrible, over 40,000 dead from both humans and collective species. But they'd won. 5 years later, Kiravan stood in a memorial garden carved into an asteroid. 40,000 names covered the black stone walls, humans and aliens together, no separation. Thomas Blake found her there. He was older now, gray in his hair, but his eyes still held that stubborn fire. They call it the Human Memorial, Kiravan said. Even though more of our people died. William would have hated that, Thomas replied. He'd say we fought together. No separation needed. A young collective officer approached and saluted. Perimeter Patrol reports pirate activity in Sector 7. They retreated when they identified our markings. Good, Thomas said. The officer hesitated. Sir, they transmitted a message before fleeing. They said, we thought you were human. Kiravan's mandibles clicked with amusement. What did you tell them? I said, we learned from the best. After the officer left, Thomas and Kiravan stood quietly together. Your species changed everything, Kiravan finally said. The collective will never be the same. Good, Thomas said. You were too comfortable. The universe isn't safe. Pretending it is gets people killed. He touched William's name on the wall. But you learned. You adapted. You became stubborn. That's the most human thing you could have done. Pirates throughout collective space now thought twice before attacking. The words human trained made enemies hesitate. Because they'd learned the lesson written in blood at Nexus Point. Never underestimate what humans will do to protect their own. And never underestimate what others can become when humans teach them to be stubborn.